I think I personally had that conversation with Madam Faith. As a matter of fact, we had invited her to keynote our very first annual general meeting, and I went to Nairobi sometime in early February and had an opportunity to speak to her to confirm our commitment to come to Sierra Leone, which she did. So some 2 days before the event, she called me on the phone to say that the acting ambassador to Kenya had gone to her office summarizing that if she were to come to Sierra Leone, her safety and security would not be guaranteed by the government of Sierra Leone. She took that very seriously, as a matter of fact. So she got on the phone with me, narrated what transpired between herself and the acting ambassador, and what she requested of me then was to speak to the Attorney General to confirm whether such a position was the position of the government of Sierra Leone. As soon as that telephone conversation ended, I jumped on a call with the Attorney General, who confirmed to me on the phone that that was not a position of the government of Sierra Leone. He also offered to speak to the keynote speaker just to confirm that our safety and security would not be in jeopardy. I mean, long story short, I mean, she was hoping to have a confirmation in writing, since she took the threats and intimidation very, very seriously. Unfortunately, we could not get that written confirmation of assurance of her security from the Attorney General. So long story short, she had to weigh the odds, and came to a conclusion that it would be safer for her to deliver a keynote virtually than risk coming into a country in which the acting ambassador had specifically warned her not to come, because, quoting her, she said to me that the acting ambassador said that he was in fact sent by the secretary to president, and she in fact not just said the secretary to the president, but in fact she said the name of the secretary to the president, Emmanuel Gaema, in that telephone conversation. So she took that seriously, especially because the acting ambassador said that in fact she was being used by a group of lawyers who were opposition lawyers, who were seeking to foment political trouble, who were seeking to stir a political revolution in Sierra Leone. So she had to weigh the odds. And noting that there is no embassy, Kenyan embassy in Sierra Leone, she said, and that was her calculation, that she would do it virtually and stay away from the threats and the dangers that she had been forewarned about. So that was essentially the conversation that we had. Unfortunately, and this is in our own estimation and calculation, when she sent the letter to, when she addressed the letter to me, because I mentioned to her that I would have to go back to my membership to explain the reason why she would not make it. I mean, she sent to me a diplomatic letter which says in summary that she could not come because of what she described as supervening circumstances. And as lawyers, we know that supervening circumstances could mean heavy snow, it could mean risk to life and limb and liberty, etc., etc. It could mean anything. Why she chose to be diplomatic in that letter is entirely a conversation, a decision for her. But I had that conversation. She had a conversation with the Attorney General of the Republic of Sierra Leone. And the same apprehension that she had, the same concern, were conveyed to the Attorney General. So nobody's making up stories. I can be quoted on any day, because I had that conversation. I had a conversation with the Attorney General, and the Attorney General had a conversation with her. And after our conversation with the Attorney General, she called me almost towards midnight and narrated what transpired in that conversation between herself and the Attorney General.
How low do you think was such a move?
I think this fits very easily into the narrative that we increasingly have a shrinking civic space. I have been in this space for too long, and I understand when the space is shrinking, increasingly. We had a situation recently of a foreign journalist who reported that she had to be ferried across the waters during the night. So all of these put together, what media folks face on a daily basis would tell you that if you have a government that would want to allow critical and dissenting voices to ply their trade easily, they would go out of the way to ensure that whether it's a group of persons, whether it's individuals, that space, that civic space is guarded, expanded, and it's not shrunk. So this fits into the narrative that freedom of expression is increasingly coming under attack, and contrary to the promises that were made by the new direction government, that they would ensure that they would depart from the acts and conduct of the previous regime. So I don't think that activists or journalists should be grappling with government over expression. We don't want to see a situation in which gadgets of journalists are being confiscated, and there's so much intrusion into their work. We live in a democracy. Democracy demands that there should always be critical voices, because government does not have a monopoly of knowledge or ideas. They should ensure that those who hold powers to account are able to do their work without fear, without intimidation, and without threats hovering around them. Because that was what was done to our keynote speaker, which prevented her from coming to Sierra Leone. And we had made all logistical arrangements. You can look up the price of a business class ticket from Kenya to Sierra Leone. Had been bought, accommodation sorted out, chaperone arranged, everything. So we're talking about loss of monies and resources and time, as a matter of fact. And we don't want to live in a democracy where the acting ambassador would leave his business and drive all the way to the keynote speaker and then, assail her with threats and intimidation, and thereby disrupting a process and depriving members of a one-on-one conversation that they could have had with the keynote speaker.
Augustine, let's look at the picture, the bigger picture, the labeling and tagging of both associations now. Conveniently, it's been pegged that the Sierra Leone Bar Association is the SLPP wing and Lawyers Society is the APC wing. It's showing a picture now that it's the broader national politics, the APC and SLPP fight, that has descended to lawyers in the form of Sierra Leone Bar Association and Lawyers Society. Your society that you're president of, has been accused of being the APC wing.
I think, Phebean, that's an easy narrative. This binary argument about everything should be APC and SLPP. If you know me, you know that I have, hyperbolically, 1 million friends in the SLPP. I have never been a member of any political party in this country. Never, ever. Never joined any WhatsApp group of any political party, right? The point I'm making is that members do, and I agree with my brother, Abdul Fatoma, who said that there's every right for persons to come together, form an assembly, form an organization, and pursue a common interest. There's every right. But I think what has been done, and this has been the practice of politicians, once they want to silence critical groups, what they do is to send out these labels indiscriminately. Obona SL APC people, Obona SL PP people. And you know what that does to good people who don't want to be tagged is that they would then excuse themselves from good causes. So for far too long, good people have sat on the fence because they do not like the labels, right? So it is that very narrative that we're pushing back to say, no, lawyers have a right to form alternative bodies. They're not parallel. At some point, we would support the Bar Association once it is sanitized. As things stand now, we have an action in the High Court. We'll await the outcome of that action. But we're not seeking as a lawyer society.
Sorry, let's get clarity on that. What action do you have in the court?
Well, I mean, I think you've spoken a lot about the Kenema incident.
Okay, so it's on the
yes, on the Kenema incident, and I think we're all familiar with all the...
Now, that's quite an interesting part,
yes.
actually, Sorie. You have challenged that at court level. Why the need to form lawyers' society? Do we run to form a parallel association organization every time there's a challenge with one body? How does that solve the problem?
I think a slight correction there. So we did not run to court. As a matter of fact, when we came back, when some members, I mean, I'm talking about hundreds of members, came back and they thought that what transpired in Kenema should not represent the collective lawyers. You know, what they did was to summon, which is to summon an extraordinary general meeting. And during that meeting, we know the event at New Brookfield Hotel, the police closed the hall, and you know we had to hold that AGM pretty much along the Jomo Kenyatta Road. So the resolution was let's form a caretaker body that will sanitize the Bar Association, conduct free, credible, democratic elections, and then we can have a leadership that represents the will of the people. Unfortunately, once that was formed, some tiny group of people hurriedly went to court to slam an injunction on that caretaker body. But mind you, this is what I've said severally, that the discussion and the notion of the lawyer society had started many years ago. Many senior lawyers will tell you that in the early 90s, mid-90s, there were a number of conversations around the setup of the lawyer society. But they always say that necessity is the mother of invention.
So last year, Augustine, you had other alternatives as members of the Sierra Leone Bar Association. If you feel aggrieved about the conduct of an elections process, you still haven't answered the why form lawyers society.
I think
getting a parallel association.
I think I was getting to the point, because I think what is important is the fact that once we're talking about constitutional rights, fundamental freedoms, you can't question if somebody were to wake up one morning and say, we want to form lawyers, which is a female group of lawyers. You can't question them. You can't say, oh, don't we have enough structure within the Bar Association? Why would you form lawyers? You know, a separate entity for women, you know, female lawyers. Why would you form legal link? You know, Rashid Dumbuya. Don't we have enough room within the Sierra Leone Bar Association? The fact of the matter is, once you have constitutional rights... But
those were not formed after a disagreement over an election conduct.
Yes, what I'm saying in essence is that there's always...
And all the leaders we see now in Lawyers Society are lawyers who were candidates for the Bar Association elections that you say had its own issues that it had.
Absolutely, absolutely. Phebean, I think if we were to go back...
No, the point I'm trying to make, Augustine, is the example with lawyers, legal link, perhaps does not fit in context.
No, I was talking about the plural organizations that we have within the legal landscape, and to say that there's no way we can put a lead on the number of organizations that can be formed. Why they were formed, out of what circumstances, can be a conversation altogether. Another conversation altogether. But the fact of the matter is there's enough space for other groups to emerge. Right?
Then what happens,
and by the way, like,
Augustine,
may I just
what
finish
happens
this?
in that space when, if you get to a point where you feel like the issues you had with the Sierra Leone Bar Association have been resolved, perhaps even if it's leadership issue, there's a change of leader, an individual or individuals that you think are doing things according to your principles, what becomes of Lawyers Society and the Sierra Leone
It would
Bar
continue
Association?
because they are alternative bodies. So members do have a right to belong to the Bar Association. By the way, I'm still a member of the Bar Association. By the way, the 400 lawyers who are lawyers of the Lawyer Society are still members of the Bar Association. We have not, nobody has resigned from the Bar Association as far as my recollection is concerned. Nobody has resigned. We're still members of the Bar Association, so you can belong to either or both. What we're seeking to do is to create an opportunity for lawyers to have multiple choices. You can decide to be a member of the lawyers, you can decide to be a member of the Lawyer Society or the Bar Association or both, right? And even if things were to, sanity were to be restored at the Bar Association, the Lawyer Society would continue to do its work. It is an institution that we have erected to be one of the pillars of governance in this country. It is not intended to silence or close doors on the Bar Association. It is intended to be an alternative to the Sierra Leone Bar Association. We have never said to our members, do not participate in the bar, do not continue your membership at the Bar Association. We have only said, some of us who are members of the Bar Association, that we do not recognize the leadership who had imposed themselves on members and would await the outcome of the courts. So even if the outcome of the courts were in our favor, the Lawyer Society would continue to be one of the institutions now in the legal landscape. And I think a lot of people have spoken about, oh, it's the APC versus ASLPP divide. No. What people should concern themselves about should be the work, the mission, the mandate of the Lawyer Society. I know it's very early days, but come back in a year, come back in 2 years, and look at the Lawyer Society. And then you would then be able to scrutinize and tell us whether we have been able to live up to the expectations and the promises that we have set up for ourselves, right? So those labels, we should stay away from them and ensure that you scrutinize and assess people based on their outputs, because I think these are easy labels that we can throw about all the time. Many people have suffered these labels. What we want to do is to have an institution that is credible and to have an institution that becomes one of the foremost watchdogs of democracy in Sierra Leone. And that is our focus.
It is